Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about public opinion. So as always, the first thing you should do is you should have your notes either printed out and next to you by the computer, or or have them on your computer at the same time as you have the video going. You may be listening to this in the car, and that's fine, but eventually you're going to need to write down some notes. So you're going to need to do that. But in any case, public opinion, and I want to start off with a definition of public opinion. As always, the combined individual opinions shared by some part of society. The combined individual opinions shared by some part of society. Now, for the most part, that looks like a pretty standard and pretty easy definition, nothing particularly complicated. But as it turns out, among political scientists, the word attitude and the word opinion are very different. They mean very, very specific things. Oftentimes when we're talking out in the public, out in what I call the real world, we use attitudes and opinions almost interchangeably. Guy's got a bad attitude. Well, you wouldn't say bad attitude, a bad opinion. But if you say I have a bad opinion of somebody, you could say I have a bad attitude about that guy. Almost means the same thing. But in political science, they mean very different things. So in order to explain the fullness of that definition, I need to explain some other words. So first we have to make a distinction between attitudes and opinions. So first, attitudes. If you break it down into sort of the most basic terms, an attitude, when we refer to people's attitudes, that's what we think. The stuff going on in our head. What we think are our attitudes. The definition that I'm going to give you is a little more complicated, but it's still important to know, and that is attitude. An attitude is an enduring tendency to think or feel in a positive or negative way towards something. Okay, so here's the thing. Attitudes can be thoughts, but attitudes can be feelings too. All that stuff is attitudes. Anything that makes you react positively or negatively towards something, either one of those is an attitude. So the key thing that you need to know right now is that attitudes can't be observed. We can't see somebody's attitude. They're impossible to observe because, like I said, there's what's going on inside our head or inside our heart if we're going to talk about feelings. And so here's what I want you to do. There's a link on your notes where it just says example. And what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and click on it. And what you'll see is it's a link to a web page that goes ahead, and if it works properly, what you should see is some guy basically sitting at his desk. And what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and watch this video for a little while. Now, it's going to seem pretty boring, so don't worry about it, but just watch it for a little while. I'm watching it right now. And while you're watching it, what I want you to do is I want you to be asking yourself a question. What can you tell about this guy's attitudes from just watching? What can you see about his attitudes? Now, if you need to pause this and then go watch it, that's fine. That noise you hear in the background, that's me watching this video right now. Okay? So, what can you tell about this guy's attitudes just by going ahead and looking at him? He's sitting there, seems like he's doing work. I don't know really what you can see. So, after you've viewed it for a little while, pause me right now, and then watch it for a little while, and then come back. Watch maybe, let's say, half of it, and then come back. Okay, so you're back? Okay, so here's the thing. From just looking at the picture... Whoa. Hang on, because that was just the end of the video there. If you watch the video, and I was watching it on my side, I watched too much of it. If you only watch part of the video, and you look at this guy in the first part of the video, and you go ahead and you turn it off, and you say, what do we know about this guy's attitudes? Like, can you tell what his attitudes are about dogs? Can you tell what his attitudes are about politics? Can you tell what his attitudes are about books, what books he likes? Can you tell what his attitudes are about spiders? Can you tell what his attitudes are about whether or not there are UFOs? The reality is that just looking at this guy, you cannot tell what his attitudes are. Why? Because as I said, attitudes are inside our head or inside our heart, I mean how we feel. Attitudes can't be observed. Now, put me on pause and then go ahead and watch the rest of the video. So pause me. Okay, so now if you've watched that video, you've seen something that gives you a clue. You may still not know what this guy's attitudes are about dogs or UFOs or other things, but you probably have a pretty good idea what his attitudes are about spiders, especially spiders that are very close to him. He didn't like it. Looked like he was going to have a heart attack. He may have pissed his pants. I'm not sure. He walked away, said he was going to the bathroom to change his pants. His attitudes couldn't be observed. But what we can say is that his opinion was expressed. His opinion was what we could observe. We can observe opinions. We can't observe attitudes, right? His opinion of spiders is, yikes. No, I don't like them. So here's the difference between attitudes and opinions. Attitudes cannot be observed. Opinions are what we express. And when he jumped out of, well, when he fell back in his chair, when he grabbed his head, when he went to the bathroom, he was expressing his opinion of what he thinks about spiders and maybe a little bit about what he thought about his colleagues at work. But he was expressing his opinion at that point, and we can observe that. We can see him jump. We could maybe watch him pee his pants. We could see him and we could observe his opinions. So, attitudes, what we think. Opinions are what we express. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, because opinions are what we call an imperfect indicator of unobserved attitudes. They're an imperfect indicator of unobserved attitudes. Now, what do I mean by that? As I said, opinions can be observed. Attitudes cannot. And oftentimes when we're talking about politics, we observe opinions by looking at public opinion polls. We can observe opinions by looking at the results of election. You know, we look at a public opinion poll and the question asks, do you approve or disapprove the job President Obama is doing? And if 42% say they approve and 68% and 58% say they disapprove, we can observe that. We can observe how people respond, but we can't observe their attitudes. Well, what it turns out is that individuals oftentimes have very conflicting attitudes about the same thing. Like most people don't have just nothing but positive things to say about President Obama or nothing but negative things to say. Most people have a mix of positive and negative things about most matters. Almost all matters, as a matter of fact. Okay? And you probably do too. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at your lecture notes, and on there's a series of questions about the issue of abortion. I want you to go ahead, and you're going to put me on pause one more time, or actually this may be the end of the, well, put me on pause, and I want you to go ahead and I want you to answer all the questions on there. So it says abortion should be legal, and it says at any point in a pregnancy, and you write yes, no, or maybe. And as you can see, yes is equal to 1 point, maybe is equal to 0.5, and no is equal to 0. What I want you to do is I want you to answer all those questions. There's 10 questions. I want you to total up your score so that we can figure out what your score is on this. And then, so you're going to pause me now, answer the questions, and then come back and we'll talk about your score, right? And it's not like more points wins or anything like that. That's not the issue. Just go ahead and do it. So put me on pause now and take the test. Okay, welcome back. Now you have your total score, right? And the scores are going to be something between 10, somebody who said yes for everything, and 0, somebody who said no for everything. Now I want you to ask yourself the question. Suppose there was a public opinion poll. You're sitting at home, the phone rings, you pick it up, they say, hi, we're doing a public opinion poll. And you say, that's kind of cool. Phil was just talking about this in class. I think I'll do this and I'll tell it to him. I'll tell him about it. Okay, cool. So they ask you this question. They say, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? How would you answer that question? And then, is your answer a good indicator of all of your attitudes about abortions? In other words, did you have a 10? 10 would certainly be pro-choice. 0 would certainly be pro-life. Were you a 10? Were you a 0? Or were you somewhere in between? If you were somewhere in between, then what it means is that question of, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice, as if all that are available are these two extremes, in some way didn't really reflect how complex and how complicated this issue is. And that's why we say that sometimes, especially surveys, are imperfect indicators of underlying attitudes. That the questions that they ask in public opinion polls oftentimes are very simplistic questions, but the issues that we face as citizens oftentimes are very, very complex. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and try and write an answer to that question, right? And when we meet, we'll go ahead and we'll talk about your answer. And then I will start on the second part of the video of the public opinion lecture, well, whenever you want to listen to it.